So, welcome, good morning, and welcome to this roundtable discussion around the theme of curriculum agility. If you go back to the first slide, Susanne, just.
How did I do that?
So this is going to be an interesting discussion, we hope. We are going to look at curriculum agility and in the light of, or should I perhaps say in the shadow of, the pandemic, how this has affected our institutions and how we have reacted in different ways. So that's our hope with the discussion. And Susanne Brink and I will be running this roundtable, but we also have the other people behind this work, the curriculum agility work here as well. We have Elizabeth Keller here, we have Mikael Lund here, we have Charlie McCartan here. Do we have anyone else here? Is Radar here as well?
I haven't seen him yet.
No. So obviously you will also join in and help out in this discussion. So the first question we have really is to look at examples basically from your own institutions on how you have responded to the COVID-19 situation and how that sort of has changed standard formats and how you have been able to do changes that might have been very difficult or even not possible beforehand. And then we'll move on to the third question later on, where we will look at the standards, or sorry, the principles, the 7 principles of curriculum agility, and see if there is a need to adapt them, to change them, to even add principles that you've seen now from your experience. Yes, I think yes. I'll stop there.
Yeah, and this is the 5th actually focus group in a series of ones at CDIO, and at the end of this year we will tread waters outside of CDIO and go to other places to get input. But you are number 5, so we started in Kanazawa with a workshop where we had about 20 people, if I remember well. In La Rochelle in France, during the European and UK meeting, we did a walking lunch exercise, which you see a picture of on the far right. In Aarhus, it was a full working day, and that's when the group of authors also became very active, and we came up with a lot of the results that we presented yesterday. In Trondheim, this January, we did an online session, much like today, also looking at what happened during the pandemic. And now here we are. And what... Carl.
Right. So just a brief introduction to curriculum agility and what it is. And what Susanne will talk about later is the scope of this, but it's a responsive and adaptable to changes in societal, industrial, and student characteristics and needs by having this change structures and learning outcomes and learning activities that we are able to change them in a timely manner. So that brings us to this, I guess.
Yeah, and our look on curriculum is holistic in that sense, that we don't only look at the program and the content which is being taught, but we look at the flexible education, the customization towards students, this dynamic content, and on top of that, we also look at the organization around the curriculum, because you cannot change a curriculum without having good structures and managerial processes, and you have to play within the rules of the law and the context of your national frameworks for education. So that's why we look at the whole thing, and you'll see that coming back in the principles as well.
Right. So if we just very briefly have a look at them, we can see, as Susanne said, that we have basically two major categories. The first one is more of the organizational categories, dealing with stakeholder involvement, dealing with governance, how rules apply, etc., to decision-making, management, making decisions. How is that done? And ensuring an entrepreneurial attitude to change, basically. And then we have the programs, we have the educational point of view, we have the pedagogics, we have innovation in education. So these are the 7 principles that we've worked out to sort of frame curriculum agility.
Yeah. We'll post these in a handout so you can look at them in the chat. But Carl, I just realized that I cannot reach the thing as I'm sharing my screen. So perhaps you can put
okay, yeah.
In the chat. Yeah. So then you'll have a cheat sheet and you don't have to learn them by heart just now. So yesterday we talked about this, that we want to see how the principles have held up in times of a pandemic and what happened there. So the first 10 minutes will be a joint activity with the whole group. And after that, we will go out in breakout rooms, and we'll have a Padlet where you can, per breakout room, record your thoughts. But first, we would like to just hear some of your experiences. How did you, what were you, if you look at those principles, what were you focusing on already before COVID happened? Perhaps in your university, there was already a lot of customization for students going on, or you were focusing a lot from the CDIO thought on stakeholder involvement, for instance. And what changed? How did that shift when COVID happened and we all had to change our education so swiftly? So I'll give you a bit of thinking time for that, and then you can just unmute your microphone and start talking. And if there's a lot of people, we can raise hands, but I think for now we'll be all right. Charlie raised his hand.
Yeah, Suzanne, will I just kick off with, the thoughts that came from our institution in Queen's and Belfast, just to get people up to speed with with our train of thought. And I mean, I don't know what it was like in a lot of other institutions, but the thing that happened with us is there wasn't tremendous focus on curriculum agility before the pandemic. But as soon as the pandemic hit in March, then all of the bureaucracy was exposed very quickly in relation to our principles 2 and 3 there, within the organization and within decision making. So that's what really opened up the whole situation to us with the whole curriculum agility thing. And specifically, we have a 2-tier system for any major or minor changes we make to curricula. It goes through, first of all, a university group for courses and regulations, any changes you want to make that are major specifically, and then it goes to a higher committee, education committee within the university. So the first thing we had to do quickly were check on the definition of what major changes and minor changes were to the curricula within our university. And, major changes are things like significant change to the mode of delivery, changes to assessment in compulsory modules, which was an instant one that was happening during the pandemic, because a lot of exams had to be changed to online delivery, reorganization of module content. There were certain things that couldn't be finished due to the pandemic, so they come under the major change category. And to a lesser extent, sequencing of modules. So that's what that is what was exposed to us. First of all, it was that bureaucracy and how we could get it to move quicker, instantly, to make our decisions within a month, because that's all most of us had. Because when the pandemic hit, our exams, our sort of assessment period in mechanical, aerospace and product design engineering are around about the end of April, start of May. So we're really a month and a half to see if we could get these changes put into place. So that's where the university focused, and that's where the senior management of the university then had to try and fast track a lot of these things through the schools and through the separate faculties. There's 4 faculties in our university. So that's the way it panned out for us. So maybe that'll help people focus on, you know, the things that they experienced in their institutions.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what other experiences are there, Mikael? Or Svante?
Svante first.
Yes, just a few words. I think one can see this pandemic as a kind of stress test of the organization and processes. And my impression from our university, at least the technical faculty, is that it worked out quite well. A lot of extra work, of course, both on various levels, but still things kept on working in a quite decent way. I think part, of course, due to many people's hard work, but a clear organization and responsibilities and delegation where decisions were made. So I think one can see it as a stress test for hard times.
Yes, definitely. And I think decisions is an important factor there, that decisions were made rather than things just happened as well.
Yeah, and you have to know beforehand where a certain type of decision can be made.
Yeah. I've just stopped sharing the screen so we can see each other as if we were on a round table actually. Yeah. So do feel free to put your camera on so we can have the feeling of sitting in the same room together. Michael, did you still want to say something?
I'm fine, thank you. I agree with Svante.
Okay, yeah.
Surprisingly well.
Yeah. Christina?
So one reflection that I made in the pandemic crisis, you could say, was that it became clear that actually education was priority number 1. I have to admit that I had doubted that for some time, given how teachers' careers are evaluated, etc. But I think when it really came to revealing what was, then education was absolutely number 1. I think a lot of people have put their research productivity on hold so that we could make education keep working all the time. And I think that was actually, I was very happy to see that. And also management, I think they really focused on education because education needed it, of course. And but I think we all realized that it is the most important mission.
True.
Charlie?
Yeah, I think one of the key things for me was, you know, there was always an impression within our school that there was serious inertia involved in trying to make change. And maybe that also put you know, a reluctance on us as program directors and module coordinators to make change quickly. And you had to plan, you know, you were always thinking, oh, I have to plan at least a year, maybe 2 years in advance before this all comes into play. Whereas what came out of it was that, you know, the bureaucracy was highlighted, and this, as Svante's pointed out, in the stress test, you could see exactly what could be done quickly to make these changes. And I totally agree with Svante and Christine as well. You know, the organisation of the university actually worked quite well. Now, people had to work harder and probably drop certain things and make prioritize the key things, but it can be done. And I think that was the surprise for a lot of people like me as program directors. You know, you suddenly were thinking, hold on a minute, you know, if they can do this now, maybe with a modicum of effort, you know, we can actually make things a bit more agile whereas previously we wouldn't have believed that was possible. So that inertia seems to be, that impression of inertia is maybe been lessened in the last year, which may be good for us in this type of area, this focus on this type of project.
And how big is the call to go back to the way things are, or is that slowly dying down now?
Well, I think a lot of people will be just taking a bit of a breather now, relax after the onslaught of that stress test, but hopefully you're right. It's important that momentum isn't lost, and that things push on to maybe continue improving. I know that's what's happening. We're still making changes quickly for next year, trying to continue with the momentum. But yep.
Maybe, Charlie, you could say something of the examples of changes that you made. So we've been talking a little bit in principle right now, but really it's the concrete stuff which is interesting, and discuss how that became different to do this time around.
Well, yeah, the examples were, instant changes to assessment, things like that you had to make because there was no choice. Normally that has to go through the courses and regulations group and then to the university education committee. So that would take the guts of one academic year to do properly. So that was the main obvious one. Other places, bits of modules, content had to be removed. Because it couldn't be done, in the buildings, because we had to evacuate the buildings and not use them for quite a while. So the sort of real practical, upfront things that probably everybody here experienced, because speaking to other CDIO colleagues in the last year, in the UK and Ireland group, most of us were sort of been forced to do the same thing. So it's probably I'm saying the same things that everybody's already experienced, but they were the key things. We had to change around timetabling as well for this year very quickly. And put some modules, that would have lasted the whole academic year, squeeze them into one, half of year, one semester, because again, at the time, we were thinking that, the pandemic will probably be ended by, December 2020. So we put a lot of our practical modules, like the introductory course and parts of the project-based learning courses into the second semester, so starting in January 2021. And that actually wasn't the thing to do. It seemed the thing to do last April, May, but that then put even more pressure on the system, and we had to make quick changes as we went along this year, as well as making those more long-term changes last April 2020, May 2020. So those practical things, and to date, we're now changing back quickly to the old pre-COVID timetables and scheduling of our modules and our project modules and our labs and stuff like that. So it was sort of, we tried to make quick fixes predicting what the virus was going to do, thinking that these were good educated guesses. That backfired. So there were a lot of changes having to be made very quickly in relation to that. So they're the key things, Johan.
Aldert and then Lamjet.
Yes.
Good morning. When I was working at TU Delft, I was really surprised that many regulations that were always on faculty level, on decentral level, they were very much centralized all of a sudden. And what Sally said, it just happened in, well, a month. Let's say in a couple of weeks, we had the central committee that said, well, we have those faculty committees, and there are committees about the boards of examiners, I say, and they prescribed, let's say, all kinds of regulations, how to proctor exams, how to hold oral exams when people are at home, how to have written exams, all kinds of regulations which were all scattered over the place. They were all centralized and applied to all the faculties at once. And that, I would say, has never happened before, that it happened in that speed. And I was also surprised it was on faculty level. We had a big design project with 300 students running when COVID broke out. And well, usually you have all kinds of regulations about you shall be, or the absence regulations, you are not allowed to be absent more than so many half days. And all that stuff, of course, well, evaporated from one day. And well, at that moment, we also left the students more or less the choice. Well, discuss it with each other, which online tools you want to use. And actually, well, all the teams, we had 30 teams altogether running. They use all kinds of different tools, and it worked very fine. So I was, in that sense, surprised to leave the initiative to the student, to make the student the change agent actually to the material.
Give them some ownership.
Yeah.
Nice, beautiful. Lamjet.
Good morning. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Thanks. So I agree with the elder about the agility. Really is not only on the content. What we face as challenges here in Tunisia and in our school is mainly with the modes of delivery and the regulation. We changed a lot delivery because we are with in-person classes. We changed them in online classes, 100% for some cases, and for some other cases, 50% of the time. So let's say the infrastructure here in Tunisia is not ready to go immediately to this online courses. So we have to adapt a lot of training the faculty member, having the infrastructure. Hopefully for Esprit, for our school, we trained our teachers on online before the COVID. So with the pandemic, we were ready to go immediately to 100% courses online. The regulation here in Tunisia is very restricted on online courses, and it is forbidden to have exams online until now. So we try to have some how to arrange some exams here at school, and they are online exams at school. So to avoid our teacher to have the papers to correct them, but to respect the regulation of our ministry, as you said. And when another problem with the private and public sector, with the private sector, we don't have very huge union of students or faculty, but in the public sector, there are two types of unions. The first one is the student union, which say, and we will not go to online courses because there are a problem of equity. All students don't have the commodity, don't have the terminals to access to these courses. But the union faculty say, no, we must go to the online because it is more secure for professors to give courses online and to do not be in contact with our students. So you see, the public is between two union. So many times he said, we will ask you in general to maintain the pedagogic continuity. It's like that, to say, if you want to give courses, give them. If you don't have the possibility, don't give them. And the exams will be only with the presential course. In our school, we maintain, we deliver all our program, 100% of our program, and the exams were on all the program. So to say at last that the main challenge is not with the content of the curriculum, but the main challenge is with facing the regulation and the delivery of this content. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, we do need some creativity and resourcefulness to deal with this situation. For the matter of time, I'm going to share my screen again. And let's see, get these out of the way. I'm not sure if you see them. There we go. In Frontime, we talked a little bit about this, and the participants there said they had been working pre-pandemic mostly on flexible education, on making things flexible for the student. And what we see during the pandemic is that students got in some way also more flexibility, that they were able to look at online courses whenever they wanted, from whatever space they were at, etc. Half of them, no, not half, but 6 of the participants back then were working on dynamic content and 2 on responsive organization. And then what became a priority, so the last column here, you see a bit what you were also saying, like organization and governance, that became super important. That was really, and then the innovation of education, making it hybrid, blended, all the things that we were sort of not, well, shy to step into, but now all of a sudden we had to step into that. So that's, you see a certain shift in that sense. But that also means that some things were left behind and fell off the table. For instance, the dynamic content, a lot of that was shoved off the table because we just needed to change so much already in structure of assessments, etc. So then you say, okay, we're just going to teach what we were teaching already and focus on all the other changes we have to make, etc. So this is quite interesting, and we will see what you have been telling us today, also how that relates to the principles. But now we're going to go to the next step of the exercise today, of the roundtable, and Carl will tell you all about that.
Yes, but first I'd just like to add one point here, because I think what's come up here in the discussion so far has been really interesting and in line with what many of us have experienced. And I was thinking about the fact that some things became more centralized, and Christina, you confirmed that as well. Have you seen any examples of where the opposite has occurred, where decisions were moved more locally instead? And maybe that's a question that we can bring into the next phase as well. Mm-hmm. So, yes, Charlie.
With regards to the local point there, I think the where we saw discrepancies and then it turned into a bigger discussion closer to Christmas were in the modes of assessment. They were very local to the schools on what you chose. A lot of schools within our faculty, which mainly contains the engineering schools and this maths and science schools, was that, you know, those that were exam based were forced to go quickly down an online open book route. And there was quite a lot of discussion on what format that should be with regards to timing. So if it was normally going to be a 2 to 3 hour exam, it was quickly decided locally by most to go for, you know, what we call the 2+1 THA, take home assessment, which is really just an open book online exam that normally lasted 2 hours plus 1 hour to scan and upload. But of course, you know, in the subsequent stats that we looked at afterwards, all of the students were taking the full 2 hours and 55 minutes and then spending 5 minutes trying to scan and upload and all been late and stuff like this. There was a bigger faculty discussion where they tried to push through that all online assessments like that should be made 24-hour. That was thrown back at quite quickly by a lot of the schools who thought that just wasn't feasible. And our school actually did that for several modules. And what it was found, when you looked at the statistics that we could take from our VLE in relation to, you know, it was made 24 hours, but it was really only supposed to take 3 hours. So give the students plenty of time, you know, in their own environment with plenty of breaks and all of that. But well over, I think it was about 60% of submissions didn't actually take place until the 9th hour. So, you know, once you make it 24 hours, you're in a completely different ballgame. So there's been a lot of discussion within our faculty and within the separate schools on the whole online assessment thing. That was very local, and we're still in the process of trying, at a faculty level, trying to unify, you know, an approach there, but it hasn't happened yet. So that's where the sort of local, the wider thing is really kicked in, and there have been some deep discussions and even arguments on the format of a good online assessment to replace what would have been an exam hall type of test. So that's thrown up a lot of debate.
Thank you.
That's fantastic to hear, such innovation happening under pressure. And I mean, we are so many who would have argued for alternatives to the whole exam, and suddenly the creation is going on. I can just add to your examples that I was contacted actually by Daniel Spooner, who said that in Canada there had been something of a student revolt or uprising against proctored exams via video. They didn't want to have camera surveillance in their homes. And so I gave seminars across Canada on doing individual oral exams online, because that the students could accept and the faculty could accept it. And Daniel said, well, Christina knows how to do it cost effectively. So that was actually a wonderful push for being able to sell some ideas that are much better from a learning perspective. And it sounds wonderful. If the students really worked on the home exam for 9 hours, imagine how much they learned.
Yeah. Thank you.
A lot of those that we did post interview, some of them, and whilst they did prefer it, there were a significant number said it was even more stressful because they were working into the early hours of the morning and they couldn't put their pens down, so to speak. You know what it's like. They don't want to hand over the final assessed bit. So that was one of the negative aspects, but that's still an ongoing discussion with us. We were also very worried about the potential for collaboration in a 24-hour test as well, but that's for another debate, I suppose.
All right, and on that note then, let's move to our maybe main question here. Thank you. Where we want you to compare the 7 principles of curriculum agility and the different responses in your own institutions, and then also look at the principles and see if there is need for adjustments, if there is need to add things or even take away things. So we've organized a Padlet that I'll actually send out now. I'll probably send it out again, but where you can see all the principles, and beneath each principle you can add comments. As you can also see, there is an additional principles column where you can add if you feel that something is missing, that we need an 8th or a 9th principle, for instance. And Susanne, how do we do this? Should we have breakout rooms?
Yes, I think we will. We're with 20-something people. I think we'll make 3 breakout rooms where you can go yourself, because if we were in a real room right now, you could also choose which table you would want to sit on. So look at the breakout rooms. I'll create them and open them, and then you can go in there. Basically, you'll probably be discussing things like we were discussing right now as well. But try to see with the principles, where does that belong? And if you're discussing something that isn't in here, even though it is about this agility and the adjustableness you have to have, then please go to that additional principles column and just write it down there. You don't have to fully formulate a nice principle rounded off, but you can give us an idea like, okay, we've been busy with this a lot, but it's not in these 7. So feel free to post anywhere, any of you. You don't have to agree as a group what goes where, but pick up things from the discussion and put them in our Padlet. So we will have a nice report in that sense of what's been discussed in the groups.
And I added the handout again in the chat. And as you know by now, having used Zoom for a long time, you need to pick it up before you go into the breakout rooms, because then you won't reach it anymore in the chat.
We'll go around.
We'll walk around to the rooms as well. So I'll create the 3 rooms, or have you done that?
Yeah, they're open. People can start going there after they've downloaded.
Yes, so thank you very much for your input here today. I think we've heard really interesting points in the discussions, and we've also seen now from our experiences that we have some real experience of curriculum agility, and that it has worked in many parts, which is great. We've seen different responses, but we've also seen similar responses, of course. Now the work will continue with curriculum agility and the principles to look at how they can be refined, how they can be better defined, perhaps, in responding to this. And the next step will also be to start looking at some kind of assessment tool for curriculum agility, how we can actually assess whether an institution is agile enough when it comes to curriculum and curricular changes. Do we have any final comments or questions?
Audience. No? Well, then thank you for your efforts today and
Kristina.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is one of the most exciting developments we've had in CDIO in the past, in the latest. So I think I just want to congratulate you to wonderful work, and it's really dynamic and interesting, and I think this can really become a good tool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I'll be following this work also. Yeah.
Thank you. So thank you all for participating.